Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Fitter and Faster Coaches Corner. I'm your host, as always, Mike Murray. Today, I have a very special guest, and though we are staying on the topic of swimming, this talk that I heard for the first time in 2013 was something that really resonated with me. It resonated with my athletes when I came back from Colorado Springs. And to introduce everybody to my guest today, I have Coach Doug Ingram on the program with us. And Doug, you probably don't remember this because I was just a young 29, 30-year-old coach. And we were both giving a presentation at National Select Camp. My presentation was test sets and their meaning behind them and how we do it. And I remember thinking, like, please just let me go ahead of Coach Ingram, because how am I going to follow a presentation about a hike up Mount Everest? So, I appreciated that I got to go before you so that, nobody was let down after my presentation. But thanks so much for joining us today, and tell us a little bit about your history in the sport of swimming. You've played a lot of different roles in our sport. You've been on the ASCA board. You've done a lot for swimming in this country. So talk a little bit about your history in swimming.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And Mike, I'm glad you led the relay off on that set of talks for us, because they hid me in the middle, as you know how that works. And can't remember who anchored it, but I appreciate that. I came fairly late to swimming. I grew up in Texas, and when you do that and you're a male, it's mandatory that you play football. So I did. And then the coaches always want to know, what are you going to do to stay in shape for football in the off season? So I would run track and things like that. And then when I was 14, in the summertime, my parents both working, needed some place to drop us off. So they dropped us at the YMCA. And come to find out, actually, I was a pretty good swimmer. I'd only swam to that point in creeks and ponds and things of that nature. But first time in a pool, and it worked out well. So I was never a great swimmer, but it did get me to and through college. As I got older, I realized, actually going into my senior year, there was one chance I had to get a little bit of scholarship help, and it wasn't going to be football or those other sports. It was going to be swimming. And thanks to Coach Easterling, I was able to get enough of a scholarship, work nights and weekends, and do that kind of stuff to get through college. So it was awesome.
That's fantastic. And how did you parlay that experience into coaching?
I went in pre-med. Ever since I was a young kid, I'd always talked about being a physician, and my mom was counting on it for sure. But I realized after my freshman year, I actually went back to that same YMCA where I'd started, and I coached the little novice swim team, taught all the lessons, kept the pool, did everything, and I loved it. I thought, this is the greatest thing. But, I'm going to be a doctor. So back to school, same thing after my sophomore season in the summer. And then in my junior year, it's like, I got to make a decision here, because I can go to school for another maybe 10, 12 years, become something I think I want to be, or I can get out next year and be a coach, which I know I love. And that's when the decision was easy. And Coach Easterling was a big part of that. He encouraged me. He taught me a ton of things that got me launched into that career.
What a great fortune to have somebody like Coach Easterling right out of the gate. Talk about what it was like working for him, one of the legends in our sport.
Well, he is a legend, and he also has quite a reputation. And in those days, you could do and get away with a lot of things that you can't do and get away with now. So he really parlayed that into his form of motivation. And it taught me a lot about how I wanted to motivate people, as well as how maybe I didn't want to motivate them. But what works for one person and coach obviously doesn't for another. You can't copy someone else and expect to have the same results. You have to take the best from each person. You have the fortune to be part of their program.
No doubt about it. And, you obviously took a lot of those things that you learned and put them into practice in your coaching philosophy, I'm sure. As a young coach, when you were first getting started, how did you balance some of the coaching and family life, coaching and personal time aspect? This is something that many of our young coaches are struggling with or learning to cope with, especially during a time of a pandemic where now all of a sudden we're on the pool deck 8 or 9 hours a day. What are some of the strategies that you used? And this is what's going to segue into your talk, because I know that being outdoors, having time to be an adventurer is very important to you. Is that something that you use to help balance the work life?
Yeah, no, it's a wonderful question, Coach. And when I was single, which was pretty much all the way through my 20s, it was a bit easier. And I mean, every break we had from the swimming season, I'm off in the mountains somewhere, South America, Europe, all over the Americas, etc. And that was a great way for me to balance out my life. Then I get married in the late 20s, my late 20s, have some kids. Things get a little more challenging at that point. And really for me, one of the most important things was separating the family from the job. And I know it's really hard to do, but even after I got out of coaching and moved into working with the Olympic Committee, same kind of huge long hours of commitment. But what I would do is literally I'd have breakfast. First, I'd go to morning practice, as we all did, come back and have breakfast with the family, take the kids to school. And on that drive back from the pool to have the breakfast, I would purposely clear my mind. Okay, can't think about the team, can't think about the school or the program. Got to get ready to focus on the kids and the family. And then the same thing in the afternoon, driving to the pool. Okay, can't worry about the family. They might have had some challenges, as we all do with children and family, but got to get ready to give 100% to my team. And I don't know if it's not easy, but for me, it was like that drive was the line of demarcation. Stop one, start the focus on the other.
Absolutely. And incredibly important and so hard, this day and age when we are accessible almost all of the time. So, we're handling these new challenges, and you seem to have a good idea of what it took to balance out. We try to do that here in this family as well, and it is certainly important. I know that you have traveled all over the world, so it would be impossible for me to ask you where you were most surprised by how much you loved the different cuisine. So right out of the gate, before we get into serious mode here, what's your favorite meal from a different culture or place?
Oh my, well, having grown up in Texas, I always have to go with the Tex-Mex. And literally, normally that means coming back from wherever I've been. So if I've been in Asia for a long period of time, wherever it might be in Europe, etc., it was always my wife's a wonderful cook, and she would always prepare a Mexican meal on the return. And that I would even seek it out. And a lot of the times when we would go to a game site in preparation for the US team, and we would, have time to look around, and I'd always is there a good Mexican food restaurant somewhere in this town or this nearby? And normally I could find something that was good. Yeah, normally. I'm not a big foodie, I have to admit. Yeah, I eat to live, and I don't live to eat.
I hear you. And were some of those USOC trips, were they used to recruit potential adventures?
They did. I was able to parlay that when I did the Everest, when I went on the Everest North side back in 2006, first time. I went right after, well, I went after the games in Torino, Winter Games. But before we were having a meeting in Beijing with all the team leaders from the various sports. So I was able to parlay those two together. And I did that several different times over the years. Because I mean, if you're in the neighborhood, for me, I'm going to check out the mountains.
A little scouting mission. And I tend to do this when I have some of my guests on the program. I look at the office, and behind you, I think I see some Tibetan prayer flags. I see some traditional dress, it looks like, behind you. Talk to us about some of the things that you brought back from your adventures.
Well, the Tibetan prayer flags are huge for me because they were so important to my Sherpa. And we'll talk about Finjo, my Sherpa, because literally he's the coach. When I'm on Everest, he's the coach, I'm the athlete. Well, let's put athletes in quotes, but I'm the guy that he's going to get up and down. And I don't get to the top of that mountain without him. Absolutely. I mean, just like, Michael Phelps was going to be a great Olympian. Was he going to be the greatest Olympian of all time without Coach Bowman? Probably not. And that's the same way with the Sherpa on Mount Everest. Anybody that says that they did it, but there's a couple of true professionals by themselves, they're not right. It's the Sherpa that gets it done. But anyway, behind me, there's also some mementos from the various games. Each sport has a pin. You've probably seen that on some of the trips you've made. So those frame things are the pins from each of the sports that competed in each of those particular Olympic Games up on the wall behind there. And then just some things that people gave, as mementos, plaques. I can't even remember. Oh, that's all the way back to Indian River, that one plaque there.
A lot of championships at Indian River, and it looks like they're still hanging on to that great tradition, and kids going there swimming very well and then jumping into the bigger schools and continuing to get fast. That tradition was carried on from you.
Well, yeah, I was so blessed. Every place that I ended up and coaching, was just a phenomenal opportunity and a phenomenal bunch of athletes that I was privileged to coach. So yeah, that still, I mean, those guys still stay in touch. We've had a couple of reunions, over the years, and I think there's another one planned in 2023. So it's crazy. It's crazy.
So my confession is that I have desperately wanted to get into mountaineering my whole life. I read Into Thin Air as a middle school student, and I've read several other books about the Seven Summits and mountaineering in general. And I've climbed all 46 high peaks in the Adirondacks.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and really enjoy it. But the question that everybody asks, Coach, is why Everest?
Yeah, well, you have the trite answer because it's there, back from George Mallory in the 20s. But, it really calls you. It asks you, do you want to test yourself to this level? And that's really what got me going there. I mean, all mountains they're unforgiving. I mean, they don't care whether you're there or not, and they can crank up some weather and some other challenges that, can be quite, in some cases fatal, but in a lot of cases very damaging to someone that's not prepared. So for me, it was a lifetime of thinking about and actually talking with athletes and coaches and even my staff that I worked with, the Olympic Committee and all, challenging them, get outside your comfort zone. Let's push. How far can we push this? What is the limit? And so I said, do I really want to find out what my limit is? And there's no better place than Everest to do that. So that was what motivated me now it'll be about 15 or 16 years ago to start thinking about Everest over and above the other mountains. And I'd read all the books like you were talking about, and I'd studied all the maps, mean, I was a fanatic about it, and said, okay, now's the time to find out, put your money where your mouth is. Can you get outside your comfort zone? Can you test yourself to this level?
I wanted to ask you, and I'm sure you're going to talk about it, but that Khumbu ice fall, is that as terrifying as it sounds and looks?
It is. I mean, mountaineering in general and Everest in particular, people don't realize, you have to go through there half a dozen times. It's not like you just go up the mountain and you climb and you're done, and then you go back down and you're done. And so every time going through there, and the way I knew it was a challenge, or the most challenging parts, is Finjo, my Sherpa. He would start to chant his chants, because he actually was raised in a monastery before he started becoming a climbing Sherpa, and so yeah, he is very, very religious in that regard. But when he started those chants, I knew it was time to move along it as efficiently and effectively as I possibly could, because this was not a good spot. It moves all the time. I mean, it moves a meter a day down the mountain, and so everything changes. Each time you go through, it's a little bit different. So yeah, mountaineering is, you go up, you put your camp one in, you go back down through the ice fall, you do some resting and recuperation at base camp, you go back up, camp one, camp two, back down to base camp, etc. So it's like weeks of boredom punctuated by moments of terror.
It's like going through a main set every
Oh, yeah.
day, and that main set's a little bit different.
It is, and tough every time, but that's what makes the athletes great, and that's what makes us all our better selves.
Well, Coach, if you're ready, I'm ready to jump right into the presentation, so you're welcome to share your screen.
All right. Tell me if it's up or not.
I will. And you can take your time, Doug, because we can edit this part too.
Thank goodness you're editing this, so we won't have this photo to start with. Is pretty high up on the mountain, about between almost 28,500 feet. Those peaks you see down below are over 20,000 feet. That gives you some perspective of where you're at. But for me, and this goes way beyond mountaineering, but this is my career, coaching with the Olympic Committee, my life, etc. And that's have big dreams, plan very well towards those dreams, and then work excessively hard to accomplish them. And that's really the theme of what I like to convey when I talk to people about these things. And of course, I have the dedication there to Jimmy Flowers, who you know, and he was with me, including his ashes on this mountain, as well as every other mountain I've climbed since his untimely death back in 2009.
Quite a photo.
Yeah. So the big dream, the miracles start to happen when you give as much energy to those dreams as you do to your fears. It's so easy to get caught up in, well, gosh, what could go wrong? This is really a challenge. I'm worried about this, that, and the other. But if you take that same energy and that same enthusiasm and put it towards your dreams, miracles start to happen. It's just, I've seen it all my life. I've seen it in swimming. I've seen it in other sports at the Olympic level, at the local age group and club level. I've seen it everywhere. Talking about the ice fall, Coach, this is in the ice fall, and there's some of the crevasses, as this one, that are so wide that and the Sherpas do this. There's a whole group of Sherpas called the ice fall doctors, is what they affectionately call themselves. And they set these up ahead of time, thank goodness, to save us the challenge. And then every day they go up in the ice fall. So they're in there every day for 2 months, making sure it's all stable and the anchors are in place. And, it's as good as it can be. But anyway, some are so wide they have to lash these ladders together, several of them, to make it happen. And one of the things that, in talking about planning well, the people that know me well know, of course, I'm blind in my right eye. And because of that, I have no depth perception. So for me, when I look down on just a regular staircase, much less a ladder like that, I can't tell when my foot's going to touch it. So I pretty much have to climb it by braille. I kind of make sure the foot touches. So for planning and training, I set up in my backyard a course with the ladders, these ones that you run up on top of your house, borrowed them from my neighbors, made a whole course in my backyard and put on all my gear, including my crampons and all the stuff I had to have on the mountain, and practice hour after hour back in that course, much to the chagrin of my wife and much to the amusement of my neighbors. But yeah, that's the kind of planning is necessary for, especially at my age. I was 64 when I made my attempt on Everest on the south side.
I don't think people realize, Coach, that it's hard enough to walk on those ladders and sneakers. And when you have metal crampons on, it's a whole different ballgame. You better hit that bar exactly right.
Well, and again, that's why I was absolutely the slowest guy doing it, for sure in our group. And we had a group of 9, and in the Sherpa, and each of us had a Sherpa. There's a lot of ways you can do Everest. That's the way that I chose to do it, myself and a Sherpa, with the support of International Mountain Guides as our base camp and logistics operator. But I mean, that's the way Sir Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay, that's why I chose that way. So yeah, I was slow, but I had a great coach in Finjo, and we moved along well enough to stay out of trouble and to make progress. We'll talk about that a little bit more later on. If your dreams don't scare you, I maintain they're probably not big enough. It's got to be something that's so big and scary that, you wake up in the middle of the night thinking, oh, and you're almost startled about it. And as I was preparing to go to make my attempt on Everest, the same thing. There were many, many times when I thought, maybe this is not the best thing to do. But then I'd come back to, no, I want to really find out how far outside my comfort zone can I really be uncomfortable. I'm comfortable being uncomfortable. So yeah, so it's this is, some of the ladders are more vertical and others are more horizontal across some of the crevasses. And I don't have one showing the spikes. You'll probably see that somewhere later on in another picture. Again, in planning, one of the real challenges is being able to focus on the big picture while keeping all those little tiny details in mind. There's a lot of people that are great. They're dreamers, they can come up with idea after idea after idea, and they're fantastic. But can they also get down to the very finite details required to make those dreams come to actuality? And likewise, there's people that are tremendous on the details. In my professional career, I've had people that I worked with that were on both sides of that spectrum, and some had a range in the middle. But the key on this, and like at your championship meet, all those little details, everything is a performance issue. That's what I would preach about. We go into every Olympic Games with our staff, what we did to help the athletes and coaches, everything affected performance. So you've got to be on your toes the whole time. And we have to protect that performance at whatever the cost is. If we need to put more money, more resources, more energy, more effort, we got to protect the chance at high performance for our athletes and our coaches. On Everest, a little bit different. Of course, you're dealing with perhaps life and death, but it's still protect performance, get the details right while keeping your focus on that big picture.
What a great mindset for a club's board of directors or a club's ownerships or a club's coaching staff to have. not just thinking about that in terms of the way that athletes look at their performance, but if the adults who are involved in helping these athletes reach their goals, if they're protecting performance and they're looking at it in that light, what a great mindset to have. So that's a key clip that we're going to take away from the first part of this presentation.
Thank you, Coach. And again, it's so true. It's one of those things that's so simple, but also so very, very important and so true. And you have to keep it upper mind regardless of when, where you are in the process. So yeah, thank you. Now this relates really well to athletics, I think. This is we've moved out of the ice fall now. We're on what's called the Lhotse Face. It's the mountain right next to Everest that shares a saddle in between them. It's the fourth highest mountain in the world, but when you're on top of Everest, it's 3,000 feet below you. But anyway, it's a face that's literally anywhere from 60 to 70 degrees at some point. That is an ice covered face and a real challenge. And to move up that efficiently and effectively is really key. The way I relate that to swimming and other sports is, it's one thing to have a lot of effort, to put tremendous effort into what you're trying to accomplish, whatever the sport is. But if it's not very efficient, then that energy and that effort gets wasted and you don't have the success you should. And then even more important, I think, is how effective that is, even more so than the efficient. You can be very efficient, but maybe not move very fast. Coach Easterling had a great comment one time, and I'll never forget it, is there was a swimmer whose name, to protect the guilty, will not mention it. He had the most beautiful stroke. It was fantastic, but he didn't move very fast. And the coach said he swims too long, too well in the same place. And that's the difference between the effectiveness and the efficiency. He looked great. He moved through the water, but not terribly effective because he wasn't going forward very fast. So again, the same thing. And here on the Lhotse Face, you have to get up that thing in a reasonable amount of time or you're going to run out of energy. So the more effective if you take a step and you slip back a little bit, there's just some wasted energy and you got to redo that step again. So it's very important, I think, in all sports, mountaineering included, to be efficient and, even more importantly, effective in all your applications.
Coach,
in our case, go ahead.
How heavy is that gear that you're carrying up there?
Not terrible. We're about, the Sherpa's carrying twice as much as I am. So I'm at about 35 pounds would be my guess. And the Sherpa's, Finjo's at least 50 to 70 pounds. I mean, in a lot of times, and again, I have no shame in admitting this, he would say, "Hey, Doug, halfway through a day, here, let me take something out of your pack." And he'd put it in his, and his pack's already overflowing. But yeah, he knew what it was going to take to get me up this thing. He was a great coach.
That's awesome.
Yeah, there's a great story. One of the premier chronicler of mountaineering is a guy named Alan Arnett. And if you've done some research, that you may have come across his blog. But Alan has climbed Everest, he's climbed K2, he's climbed, again, all over the world. But he's probably the premier guy in keeping us all informed about what's happening over there in the Himalayas. This, by the way, is Camp 3, which is about halfway up the Lhotse Face. And obviously, again, those unbelievable Sherpas hack out these platforms where we can put a tent. Otherwise, we can't even camp here on this spot, but we have to, because this is right below what's called the death zone. So you're about 23,500 feet. Your body can still recuperate a little bit. And so therefore you want to spend the night there before you make your summit attempt, so that you have you're most prepared for that.
So you're sleeping kind of at an angle almost. Where's
Yeah, this picture gives it a little bit awkward. There is an angle, but you're still somewhat level because they've hacked out a platform there for you out of solid ice. I mean, it's hours of work for those guys at 23,000 feet. It's amazing. But what I was going to mention, Alan tells a great story about he had a young tent mate because he had tried a couple times on Everest and before his summit, and then he tells a story about having a young guy in his tent one time that says, "Gosh, my legs, there's something wrong with my legs, they're hurt." And he goes, "Uh-oh." And he, what do you mean? He goes, "Well, gosh, they're so tired, so I can hardly move them. They feel like they want to cramp up." And he's like, "Okay, yeah, you're not hurt, you're hurting." And that's such a great thing for all of athletics. When you're really pushing yourself, whether it's in practice or at a competition, or wherever it may be in life, are you hurt or are you hurting? A business deal goes bad. Somebody breaks up with you in a relationship. You miss a deadline. All kinds of things happen. Yeah, are you hurt? No, you're hurting. What do? You give up? No, you figure out how to deal with that, how to improve on that, and you get better. And it's just a classic story because the same thing, when you're hurting, you can always find a way to get past that. If you're hurt, yeah, you got to go see somebody and get fixed. But if you're just hurting, there's a way to get past it.
No doubt.
This is there's Finjo there on the bottom right. Again, like I said, he's a Lama. I mean, that's how far up in the religious sector, but besides being a Sherpa, he's also a Lama, and did all the courses and all to achieve that level in the Tibetan Buddhist faith. And right about the time here's how good a coach he was. There's two good stories on this. First of all, we trek in with the International Mountain Guides group. They get us all in that. It's a 10-day walk just to get into base camp, and we get in there, and that's where we meet our Sherpa for the first time. And they did such a good job matching Finjo and I. A man of few words, but when he said something, it was important, and it meant something. You had to get it done. So we're up and down a few times on those rotations, getting our gear up high, getting ourselves acclimatized. And the last time through the icefall, we come across this very simple ladder, quite horizontal, across a crevasse, and always Finjo would go first. He steps aside and he says, "Doug, you go first, Sherpa style." And I thought, wow, this guy that 6 weeks ago probably thought, "Man, did I draw the short straw with this old codger trying to get him up this mountain." Now trust me enough that I go first and belay him versus the other way around. And I thought, I said, oh, gosh, Finjo believes in me. And that's what coaches do with their athletes. They help them believe not only in themselves, but in the program and what, the program can do for them. And, he made me believe, yep, we can do this mountain, Finjo. And in the second one, it was right about the time this picture was taken. It was in between Camp 3 and Camp 4. 3 is at 23,500. Camp 4 is at 26,000. You're up into the death zone. So you got to get up there, spend as little time as possible, make your summit bid and get out of there. But you were always slower, like I said, than most everybody, not in our group, but that we ran into on the mountain. And at this day, for whatever reason, I think it's because he had done such a good job of taking care of me, we're passing people. I mean, people are in front of us, we catch them, we ask if we can clip around them and get on the safety line in front of them. And Finjo, we're taking a rest breaker. He says, "Doug, you're climbing very well. Tomorrow we summit." And I mean, I get chills telling that story right now. But again, that's what a great coach does. It's like, by the way, you can break the world record. You can win the Olympic medal. You can win the state championship, whatever it is. And when you believe in your coach and your coach believes in you, those magic like that happens. Anyway, this picture actually is taken from that peak, Lhotse, looking across at Everest. That's the summit ridge on Everest. You actually come up, catch the ridge right down to the bottom there from Camp 4, the bottom of the ridge where it starts, and you follow that ridge line all the way up to the summit. The little peak partway up is called the South Summit. And you drop down, then you go up two little steps, which are rock faces. One's called the Tenzing Step, and then the real crux of the climb is the Hillary Step. Hang on a second. You got to stay hydrated like your athletes, right? The photo here that, you know, it's pretty intimidating to look at that and think, okay, tomorrow I'm going to be on there, you know, but if you're going to be at the top, you've got to take that route. I mean, there are no shortcuts to any place worth going. And again, something I've been an advocate of all my life. And if you're going to get there, there aren't any shortcuts. You've got to take every step and stop it and go every station, every process along the way. And in fact, our team back at the USOC, the team that I worked with, they put up in front of all the elevator. We're on the 5th floor of the building there, all the elevators. That quote, "There's no shortcut to any place worth going, take the stairs." And so the whole time I'm on Everest for 2 months, they're going up and down the stairs to work. I thought it was great. I'm sure I felt their energy when I was over there.
Well, you're keeping them healthy too back home.
Well, one of the ladies said, and this was a little bit crass, but she says, if Doug doesn't hurry and get back, I don't know if my butt's going to make it through this. Now we're on the ridge. In fact, I'm on the South Summit looking across. We're about to do the Tenzing Step. The folks ahead of me are, and I'm about to drop down and then start back up. But the thing of this picture that really stuck in my mind, and it applies again to athletics so well, that the margins between success and failure are just so razor thin. I mean, we know it in our sport, hundredths of a second, the gold medal versus the silver medal, 3rd place and being on the podium versus 4th and not, hundredths of a second. You know, millimeters in track and field, just all the sports, just so tight at the highest levels. And the same thing here on this mountain. You know, it's not necessarily the strongest person that's going to win each time, but who's most prepared physically, mentally, emotionally for that particular effort and challenge. And in this case, you know, that's really what came to mind for me when I saw this picture. I don't remember, you know, I saw it afterwards after taking.
I mean, what are you telling yourself when you look at that ridge? And I'm sitting here, I'm not sure what my self-talk is. And we talk to our athletes all the time. We talk to our staff about self-talk. What are some of the things that you're telling yourself as you're getting ready to do that?
I'm really glad you brought that up, Coach, for 2 reasons. One is I'm going to back up just a little bit and then I'll get to that answer. One of the things I should have mentioned, again, and part of the plan well, again, I'd read all the books, looked at all the maps, studied the photographs of other people's expeditions, etc. So, and when I'm moving through the process, I mean, literally from the time I landed in Kathmandu, through the trek, up the mountain, I'm always thinking, okay, what is the next landmark? What's the next benchmark? And I had never been there before, but I come across something like the Yellow Band or the Triangle Face, the Geneva Spur, all these famous landmarks on the climb. And it's like I have been there. I'm thinking, oh yeah, there's the Yellow Band. Yeah, I remember. No, wait, I don't remember because I've never been here, but it's that whole visualization process. You know, the psychologists have talked to us about this forever, but I experienced it firsthand, vividly, to my core in that. I mean, it was like deja vu. It's like, I've been here before. No, I have been here in my mind, but that doesn't make any difference because I can handle this. And also having those smaller steps. Okay, I made it to base camp. Good job. If I don't go any higher, great trip. Go back home. I've been through the ice fall. I've been up the Lhotse face. I've been across the yellow band. All those little things are the same process that we all go through with our athletes, the stepping stones to the big goal, the smaller intermediate goals that get us to the big goal. Now, what you're thinking about here on this one, again, in my, you're really self-contained because you have an oxygen mask on, and you're, especially in my case, my eyesight was even more limited than normal because I kept, my goggles kept freezing. And when I'd have to take them off and scrape them, and then they would narrow down and it was a little small. Okay, I got to clean them again because I got to be able to see better. But anyway, you're really amongst yourself and you have to decide, what is the goal? Is it really, really worth it? And I think we'll talk a little bit about that in just a second on another slide as well. But that to me was what, okay, I've gotten to here. Is it worth the effort to get across and make as you say, that's an intimidating thought there. Mountaineering is really a simple sport. You put one foot in front of the other and you don't fall, and then you succeed. I mean, that's the essence of the sport. And here it's 10,000 feet down to Tibet on the right, and it's 8,000 feet down to Nepal on the left. So again, one foot in front of the other, don't fall. That's really all my thought was. It's a little bit like we talked about clearing your mind from the pool to get ready for the family at home, clearing the mind from the family to get ready for the pool. Keep your mind totally you got to be mindful of exactly what it takes. Take a step, clip in, move your ascender up, take a step, move your ascender, take a step, clip out. Those kind of, you can't make any mistakes. That's the razor thin margin. And it's the same again in athletics. One small mishap on the turn and you're not the gold medalist. Phelps and Cava in the 100 fly. Cava comes short, Phelps stretches out, he wins 8 gold medals, otherwise he doesn't. It's just, that's the whole difference between success and failure at the highest levels. And that's what we do in sport. It's what you coaches do with your athletes all the time. I hope that answered your question.
100%, 100%. And what a great visualization for athletes too. Just keep going, one step at a time.
Yeah, you anticipate this so well, Coach. I'm moving right into the next one, which is, part of you start out at night because the mountain's a little more stable then, and you need to get off before the storms come in the afternoon. So you're climbing through the night, up until you get up onto the ridge, and then daylight, you can see daylight coming up behind my climbing partner there in the first picture on the left. And then again, the Cornish Ridge on the right as he's moving across. I'm a little bit ahead of him at that point. But these are the things we want to talk about. Is it hard or is it impossible? That same great mountaineer, Alan Arnett, that I mentioned earlier, he has a good one on this one too, about is it hard or is it impossible? And, the same thing. So many things you hear every day, somebody says, oh, that's impossible. Well, is it? If it was, there's so many things that wouldn't have gotten done in not only sports, but in everything. The moonshot. Was it impossible for President Kennedy to say, after we've been beaten by the Sputnik and we're so far behind that we will get to the moon this decade and bring a man safely back, and we'll learn all the great things that entails, and we'll do it not because it's easy, because it's hard. And that's what's the great thing. And that's where you have to decide, okay, here I am on this summit ridge of Everest. It's probably 3 or 4 breaths for every step. I mean, it's slow progress. And I'm talking about, someone's asked me for what's it like breathing at altitude. And the best description you can give them is it's like breathing through a straw. You can't ever get quite enough oxygen in to satisfy, but you have to pull as hard as you can to get as much as you can. And then you do several breaths, and then you take another step, and then some more breaths, and then another step. And it's just, and that's when you think, is this impossible? And that's the big decision on all mountains. It's the big decision in life. If it's impossible, or is it just really, really hard? And is my goal still there and I can still strive towards it?
Incredible.
And again, everything is against you. There's, the wind's howling. It's sunny, looks great, but it's about 25, 30 below in the temperature. And the wind's coming about 25, 35 miles an hour from the west. And so it's about 60 below wind chill. So yeah, it's going against, like I said, my eye was struggling because I had to keep taking my goggles off, scraping the ice, and my cornea was starting to freeze. And when you only got one, you need that good cornea. And so it's just, everything's going against, and there's 1,000 reasons. And this is in life, this is in sports, this is in swimming. There's 1,000 reasons to stop. Okay, I can't do this set. I can't accomplish this goal. But there's one reason to keep going, and that is that goal. And that's what is inside each and every person. And if you believe in that goal, and if you have done the preparation necessary, then you can keep going. And like I mentioned before, you can always take one more step. I mean, we're looking at the Hillary step there in front of us, or the Tenzing step, and the next beyond that's the Hillary step. And then we got the summit. That's all that's left. But I'm still almost 3 hours away because you're moving slow. And I'm thinking, okay, can I make it to the top? I don't know. Can I take one more step? Sure. All right. Can I make it to the top? Not sure. Can I take one more step? Yeah. So it's just one foot in front of the other. Don't fall.
I mean, some of the challenges that you're talking about there, when I first heard this talk and I relayed some of it to our athletes at the time, I remember saying very clearly, because you've said this before, I was worried about my cornea freezing, and I was still taking another step forward. It's hard, I think, to compartmentalize that moment, but not only are you worried about your cornea freezing, but it's 30 below. You're almost at 29,028 feet at the top, right? It changes maybe a little bit every year.
Yeah, still growing. It's a little higher than when I was there.
The wind, how cold are you physically at this point in time?
Well, again, it's something that I get kidded about all the time because I use it a lot. There's really no bad weather. There's only bad gear, bad clothing. And these suits are amazing. These what they call an 8,000 meter suit, because they use them on the 8,000 meter peaks. And so, yeah, the challenge is not getting anything exposed to that. And the problem with my cornea was the wind coming from the west constantly, me taking my goggles off to clean them, and then that cold air before I could get them back on. And then later we'll talk about another mistake, another cardinal sin that I made, but we'll hit that in a second. But those are the things, you can handle it if you have the right gear, if you're moving along well enough. If you have to stop. And on the way down, we did get stuck at the top of the Hillary step, and my fingers still talk to me about that. But as long as you're moving and as long as you have the right clothing, you can handle it. I mean, it's not easy,
right?
But that's why we do it, because it's not easy. That's the beauty of it. The hardness is easy. And again, just to throw a couple more things, some days you have fun and some days you build character. And this is a character building day on the summit day. I mean, going through that ice fall is a character building day. And, you just have to look at it that way that, yeah, most people wouldn't put this in the fun category, but I'm building some character here. I'm testing myself. I'm going to find out how close to my physical limit I can get. And this segues into our nice quote here. This is Mahatma Gandhi. Strength does not come from the physical capacity. It comes from an indomitable will. Obviously, he exhibited that throughout his life. This is on the Hillary step, and literally, I desecrated the memory of Sir Edmund Hillary trying to get myself up that thing. Because you talked about the crampons, the metal spikes. Now it's metal spikes on rock, which is even more challenging, or just as challenging as on ladders. And here in Colorado, if I had to go up a 50-foot rock face, yeah, okay, no big deal. But at 28,500 feet, yeah, it's a big deal. So quite a challenge to make that happen.
Arguably the most technically challenging part, or is the Khumbu Icefall harder?
For me, this was harder. And even though it's such a short period, the Icefall is more dangerous, I think, because here again, you have the lines both for ascending and rappelling back down. So as long as you don't make a mistake, and you have to be careful because your brain's not getting quite the oxygen you normally do. So don't make a mistake and not clip in. And people have made that mistake on this. And I mean, who I'm impressed with is Hillary and Tenzing Norgay, Sherpa. They had to do it before, came across this and do it. Nobody had ever done it. Was it impossible or really, really hard? It was really hard because they made it up, but they did it without the knowledge of what's beyond this. So quite the challenge. It's changed though, Mike, the earthquake, in fact, the biggest rock there that you're looking at to my left, it fell during the earthquake in 2015. So now they call it the Hillary snow ramp, because literally in most seasons, it's just a ramp of snow up there. The steepness has really been lessened because of that particular earthquake.
It's a dreamscape.
Yeah. So once you cross the Hillary step, that's really the crux, like I said. Then it's just a matter of that one step in front of the other for another hour for the last 400 feet. But if you can imagine that's once around the track, so once around the track, I mean, not even once around, 400 meters is the track. So 400 feet, quarter of the way around the track, 1 hour. But anyway, another story. You're on top. There's no more steps. It's like, oh, I'm here. And that's, of course, the Olympic flag that the athletes from the training center had signed. And here's the cardinal sin. Look at my hands.
I see that.
Because of the wind, I couldn't hang on to the flag and get it stretched out. And I had some photos I was holding up for another picture. I had Jimmy's ashes I was trying to get spread without causing a commotion on that. So I took my gloves off to hold this up and to get those other things done, literally less than 5 minutes. But I paid the price later. And I did not realize that it happened until I saw the photo, because Finjo took the photo and I said, wait a minute, I got my gloves off. What a doofus. Yeah. So, but here's the thing about, I'm on the summit less than 10 minutes. When an athlete wins the Olympic gold medal, when an athlete wins the state championship, whatever it might be, they're on the podium 3 or 4 minutes. But there's, in my case, in their case, decades of dreaming, years of preparation, months of planning, weeks of pain, days of the climbing, hours of waiting just for that 10 minutes. Is it worth it? Yeah, because it's not those 10 minutes. It's those decades before. It's not the gold medal. It's all it took to get yourself to that place. It's the journey along the way, not the actual summit itself. So that's my reflection back to sport on that one.
What were the emotions, Doug, when you're sitting there and you realize that, not only did you accomplish this at an age that most people won't ever even think about climbing Everest, but just a lifetime of, all of your adventures culminating in this moment. Were you able to appreciate that?
Well, first of all, my most emotional point was when I got over the Hillary step and I could see people on the summit. And literally, I thought I was having a heart attack. And my heart started pounding. I couldn't breathe. And come to find out, my oxygen had frozen up a little bit. And so Finjo gives me a slap upside the head to break the ice away from my oxygen filter. So, but anyway, along with that, I was so emotional about, I might climb Everest. This could happen. I can see the top. You know, that's when I really was getting emotional. Once I got to the top, again, it took so much more effort just to get there that I was so tired. My eye had really gotten blurry. My hands were getting cold, which I now know why. I thought, Finjo, let's get these pictures. We got to get down. Because again, you know, Ed Vestures, you may have read some stuff he's done. He has a great comment. Getting to the top is optional. Getting down is mandatory. And that's what I committed to my family and friends was, yeah, I'm going to try to summit, but I'm going to come home safely. So yeah, we had to get out of there. And that goes right into the next one, because the clouds, you can see on the upper right, the clouds are starting to come in, because that's what happens as the day progresses, and it's getting worse. The conditions are deteriorating. There's me in my beautiful green Kermit the Frog suit on the right. That's me coming into base camp 4 days later. Can't even take the last step up into the what's called the Himalayan Rescue Association tent to get checked out. Hospital they run there at base camp. But anyway, you know, I'm at a point where hands are frostbit, cornea is frozen, legs are trashed. I mean, I've never been so tired in my life. I had to reach down to some place I'd never even touched and grab hold of it. I had to feel things that I had never felt before. Where's that? How deep in that reservoir can I go? I got to get really deep in order to get this done, which is something, of course, I had never done up and down the mountain. So again, you know, when you think that's it, no, the human body is amazingly adaptable and trainable, and it can do things that are so amazing. You can reach a little deeper and dig a little deeper. So that was the thought I had there. And the other one I have is that it doesn't have to be fun to be fun, which I know sounds goofy, but you know, you can go to Disneyland. Yeah, that's a lot of fun, but also doing something that's so challenging with a group of people and a coach like Finjo that you so much respect and you trust with your life on the rope. That's also really fun. And you have to find out those things are just as fun as going to Disneyland. So it doesn't have to be fun to be fun.
Amazing, amazing. And when you come down, and I can only imagine that Finjo has a sense of pride for getting people up there. And I know that that knowing you, I know you were super appreciative. Do they, is it just like is it like a typical Tuesday for those guys? They're just so acclimatized to that environment?
Well, that's good. I'm glad you asked about Finjo, because he really is he and all the Sherpas they're the heroes on the mountains, not us, not the guys that go up at the Westerners in particular. It's really the Sherpa, they're the hero. He was born and lives in a village called Fortsey at 13,000 plus. So obviously he's got a natural, and his people, the Sherpa people, have always lived at those altitudes. So there's a lot of heredity there behind them. But just to give an example, he's carrying twice as much as me for sure. He's always waiting on me each belay point or protection point to the next. And he doesn't even put his oxygen mask on until we're at Camp 4 at 26,300 feet. I asked him, I said, Finjo, you need your oxygen? No, I'm fine. I put it on later. We save just in case you need it. I mean, and these guys, and that's the thing that's a shame. And it's one of the reasons I wanted to do it this way, because again, Hillary and Tenzing Norgay Sherpa did it this way, but also you're the decision maker. The Sherpa They will tell you, hey, this is dangerous. We should turn back. And this has happened so many times. It makes me sick to my stomach to think about people doing this. But people, no, I want to go to the top. We keep going. The Sherpas will actually walk to their death. They won't turn around. The climber makes that decision if you're doing the Sherpa classic style climb. So I was so respectful of him, and the fact that I would say, well, what do you think, Sherpa? Finjo? And he would always give me an opinion, but say, but you decide, Doug. It's like, no, that's why I asked you, you're going to decide, because they're just so good at this stuff. They're unbelievable. I still support him and his family with some donations to help his kids in school, because that's what's really important for them is getting an education. And he's got one girl in university and two kids in what would be our high school down in Kathmandu, and it's expensive.
Sure.
But that's why he's a climbing Sherpa, because they make about 10 times the annual salary of a Nepalese just in the 3 months they're on the mountain. And then they do their other things along the way as well. So yeah, they're amazing people. A couple of myths I want to dispel, because you see these pictures. I know you've seen it if you've been, checking the literature and all out. Oh, it's so crowded up there. Yeah, there's a couple of pictures. One was 2012, the year before I went. One was, I think, 2016, 2017. And even this last year up near the Hillary Step, on the summit ridge, where it's backed up. Well, that's because, you can only climb this on certain days. And we were very fortunate. There were about 9 or 10 days that season that were summitable. Whereas those other years, it was 2-3 days max. So everybody went the same time. It's a huge mountain. I mean, Finjo and I, granted, we always left before everybody else because we knew we'd be slow, but we were alone far more than we were around people, far more. So it's not, it can get crowded at some of the bottlenecks. And it's gotten worse, unfortunately, because the outfitters and companies that organize these things are not as qualified, and they're letting people do it that shouldn't be up there, to be honest, to be frank about it. So it's slowing everything down and bottlenecking it up. But it's not like those pictures show. That's one day out of 50 years versus on the 2 months I was up there, didn't see as many people at all. The other is the trash. Until we got to Camp 4, you'd see a candy wrapper blow out of somebody's hand every once in a while, or I saw a couple of old rusty tin cans at Camp 2. I thought, oh, I'm sure they're from Tenzing, Norgay, and Hillary. Sorry, I meant Hillary. No, but anyway, just, it washed up out of the glacier, it bubbled up out of the glacier. But it's clean. It's much cleaner than what people always say, that it's a dump, it's a trash heap. Now, the earthquake made it a little less, added a lot of trash, because the destroyed tents, destroyed infrastructure, and they haven't been able to get it out. They've done a couple of efforts to get it out, and they're going to have to keep doing that. But from Camp 4 and up, you can't. I mean, it freezes. The tents that get destroyed by the wind, the bodies that are left there, people that die, they can't bring them down. I mean, it's too dangerous on the rescuers, too dangerous. And so it's tough in the death zone from the Camp 4 and up. Yeah. So anyway, I like to dispel those myths, because people always say, well, yeah, why would you climb something that's so crowded and so trashy? It's like, well, it's not crowded and it's not trashy. It can be, but it's not always.
From an athleticism.
We're getting on a soapbox there, Coach.
No, that's great. And listen, if we can educate people through this dynamic, I'm all for it. Is it a fair comparison to say, from an athleticism standpoint, that Sherpas are professional athletes?
Oh, absolutely. And coaches, professional athlete, professional coaches. And that's the way I consider them as, and there are there's a few mountaineers around the world that are professionals as well. We all know their names, they're famous, and they do the amazing things. Guys like me, we're amateurs. I'm like a master swimmer. I mean, I'm a rank amateur. I don't make the top of that without Finjo.
Yeah, unbelievable. I'm sure there's a lot of lessons coaches can learn from reading some of the things about Sherpa culture and the pride that they have for the job that they do.
Yeah, they're very compassionate. I mean, it's a huge balance between strength and humility because they will never, ever talk about how good they are, and they are great. In fact, they always downplay that, well, you did it, Doug. No, Finjo. We did it, but really, I couldn't have done it without you. Could have done it without me, but I couldn't have done it without you. So yeah, the strength and humility is just what a counterpoint those two things are, those of that Sherpa people.
Absolutely.
So my last one here, and that's a typical doorway on the trek out of one of the villages. And, I'm thinking there, this whole experience, you learn from what you had experienced in the past. You live for the day. I had to stay in the moment, had to be mindful. I couldn't get ahead of myself, really had to focus. And then this gives you hope for tomorrow, for what anything can happen, And so as long as you're improving and striving and seeking, you're living a great life. Doors, as in this door in the Sherpa house here, they're there for people to open. There are thresholds that people can cross. And people always say, how's Mount Everest? Well, it's not for everyone, but for everyone, there is an Everest and they can seek it out. And I challenge and ask people to do that. Get out there and find your Everest, whatever it may be, and you'll be a better person and people around you will be better for it. So namaste.
Absolutely. I think a lot of coaches can relate to that last quote that you have there. And we say often in our program, everybody's not going to be an Olympian, but we can be Olympic with everything that we do. And
Brilliant.
Yeah, I see so much in that. And I really appreciate that thought.
My pleasure.
And Doug, if you want to bring yourself back to the screen, that would be great.
Yes, sir.
And Coach, yeah, what are some of the things that you brought back to? We know that you share this great story with the athletes at National Select Camp every year, and you've shared it with many coaches. What are some things that you brought back from the experience that have nurtured your life or enriched your life back at home?
Another great question, Coach. And for me, having gone through that experience, I feel so grateful to have had the opportunity to have the experience I had. The summit really, again, it's not that important. I mean, most people think that's the big deal. You go there to climb the mountain. Yes, you do. But what you did to prepare for that, what you learned along the way on the trek, on each part of the climb, being part of we call it the brotherhood and sisterhood of the rope, being part of that galvanized team. I've always been a team person. Swimming, people always say, yeah, it's an individual sport. Not the way swimming does it. Swimming takes an individual sport and makes it a team effort. And to me, that's the beauty of it. And coming back, everything I want to do is how can we collectively get better? What can we do as a team, as a family, as friends, neighbors, et cetera, to all improve and not have the disparity that we sometimes see across our great country.
Well, 2020 has been an Everest of sorts for many of us. And I know that, you have a lot of experience in how some of these things play out on a global athletic standpoint. So, when we look at Tokyo, it's going to take a tremendous effort. Talk a little bit about how you think our country is going to handle this and the world really. How are we going to handle this challenge moving into Tokyo?
Yeah, Tokyo is, a challenge is mild. It's going to be a very challenge, and getting ready for Tokyo has and will continue to be an even greater challenge. But I have tremendous optimism about Team USA because nobody is better at handling adversity, being innovative, handling the challenges. You know, the Olympics, every championship, every high moment, you know, it's a world of distractions. There's so many distractions, but nobody's better than our group of athletes and our group of coaches at getting down to the essences. What's it going to take? What are the key points that are going to help us succeed at the Olympic Games? Nobody's better at it. So we'll be just fine. I mean, Tokyo will be very hard for anybody and everybody that's striving and going to be there. But I have ultimate faith that we're going to come out on top as usual.
Well, Doug Ingram, it's been such a pleasure to have you on. I'm so thankful that we were able to squeeze you in this busy holiday week. We really thank you for your time. We'll have this whole episode available both on the Fitter and Faster YouTube channel and on our Fitter and Faster website. Coach Doug, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. I'm really looking forward to getting this out to people, and we wish you the best this year.
Coach Mike, you and your family, have a very, very happy new year. And we look 2021 will be better. We all know that. So we just got to get through it. So keep up the great work, Coach. You're doing such a wonderful job, both at the local level and then I really admire what you're doing with ASCA.
Thank you so much, Coach. And we hope to see everybody again next week. Thanks again, Coach Doug Ingram, and we will see you all very soon. Bye-bye now.
Take care. Bye-bye.